Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Hi, Rob Browne here with you on this beautiful. Well, it's been raining all during the night, Wednesday morning, but I'm just jacked up because as soon as this show is over, we are getting in the automobile and heading down to OBA, Orange Beach, Alabama. A bunch of shows from the balcony, looking over Ono Island in the Gulf of Mexico. And Dudley Dawson is going to join us here in the first segment. Dudley, as a great Southerner, knows how you can tell when you're around Yankees, when you're down at Orange Beach or Destin or Pensacola. Hey, let's go to the ocean. It's not the ocean. It's the Gulf. It's the Gulf of Mexico. It's the seafood pantry of the best seafood in the world, like the Atchafalaya Basin in Louisiana is the pantry to Cajun cooking. What is the holy trinity of Cajun cooking? Celery, onions, and bell peppers. With all due respect to Cherry Club members, Blake Klein Peter and Tanner Smith Tanner, we call him, from Lake Charles. But a lot to cover today. Second segment, Vince Ferrara checks in from Knoxville, the sports animal, talking the Tennessee Vols. They look good against Virginia. Virginia, certainly not a top 10, top 15 team. Tennessee took care of business. And again, way too many people out there waiting for the other shoe to drop. Joe Milton, he's just got this strong arm. He can't throw short and intermediate passes. You know, he's been in the system with Josh Heupel for 2 years. You know, players can get better. Shocking news to some people. Hour number 2, we'll be joined by Will Gunter, ESPN. The Game 107.5 over in Columbia, South Carolina, has a great statewide show talking Carolina with him. And in the fourth segment, we'll be joined by Jacques Doucet, WAFB Channel 9 down in Baton Rouge. Love this guy. He and his crew working on an outstanding documentary. I saw the teaser a couple of days ago about Cecil the Diesel Collins, just what happened with him. That short 3.5 game career just makes people wonder what could have been. It's going to be a great documentary being released October 15th. We're here 6 days a week, man, 25 shows a month. Follow us on Twitter at @sidelines_live. Let me say a couple of things real quick. Bring Dudley Dawson in here. Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square out in Collierville, Tennessee. The new brands are coming in. You can feel it. Golly, it's only going to be 94 here today, Dudley, and I think it's going to be in the 80s for the next week or so. In the temperatures, the lows in the 60s. That's cold around here. But new brands coming into Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. Pendleton, Schaefer Outdoors, Danner, Vask, Light Boots, Higher Boots. When you go in there, you are going to you're going to go wild. You're going to go crazy because there's so much cool stuff in there. Also, Old South, second largest Filson dealer in the southeastern U.S. They've got Devil Dog jeans. If you're a size 34, you wear a size 32. You get the drift. They make you feel smaller. They really are. They're great. They have great people. They're Charles Hall, the owner, Raven, the whole crew. They're great to work with. They love talking college football. So do we, Dudley. Hogs 1-0, and that was expected. But what was the takeaway? You're smart. You've watched a lot of football. And by smart, I mean you have a high football IQ. You can take away positives and negatives in a game where the Hogs clearly overmatched their opponent.
Well, two biggest things I took away from that were, number one, Arkansas won a football game 56-13, and I don't care who the opponent was. There were people out there disappointed. They forget about some close ones in Little Rock before, some close ones up here when the program wasn't on as firm a footing. So it was, it proves that there's expectations and they feel good about the program. If 56-13 doesn't do it for you, I don't care who you're playing. The second thing was obviously you expected Arkansas to go run the ball like crazy on Western Carolina. Western Carolina loaded the box, brought everybody up in there, and Arkansas ended up running really for only about 3.5 yards a carry, and that became a concern for many of the fans. And as an objective sports writer trying to take a look at it. That's not what you think was going to happen. I'm sure there's going to be a renewed zest, put toward that this week. One of the more interesting things is Rocket Sanders has not practiced Monday or Tuesday. Don't know if he's going to play this weekend. So you may see plenty of Rashad Dominion, A.J. Green, Isaiah Augusta, and Dominique Johnson this week. So, and obviously get Brady Latham back, and I think it showed how important he was not being in his spot on Saturday. And so I expect them to do better, and I expect there to be a renewed emphasis on that.
What did you see out of the defense differently? You had talked about the Hogs are going to have more depth on the front line defensively, which is huge for success in this league.
Yeah, I think Coach Pittman probably talked about it a little bit and kind of encompassed what I was thinking. The defensive line that they brought in here, all these transfers, was solid, but they didn't flash like he thought they might. He thinks there'll be, an expectation of that happening this week. They were pretty vanilla. You're not going to show a lot in these first three games. Yeah. Kent State this week and BYU in the third week because you didn't have LSU and Texas A&M, so you're not going to show the whole photo book up there. But I do think that they feel very comfortable about those guys, and that when it comes time to unleash the aggressiveness, that they will.
Yeah, and you talked about they looked pretty vanilla. And it's going to take a few games for those guys to get used to one another, what their tendencies are. You look to your left, to your right, the guy behind you, and it's a learning process. But I just know the type of defense that Travis Williams, I believe, will run, and it's going to be aggressive. I think you'll be getting after them, and that's going to be fun to watch. And again, the secondary, their success depends on the upfront rush.
Yeah, and certainly they ended up with 5 turnovers on Saturday, 4 of them interceptions and a fumble. Secondary had a lot to do with that. They had a hand in all 5 of those. They had a pick 6 with freshman Brad Spence, a linebacker, taking it to the house, which really capped off things. So other than, they're running out of water and not being able to get the fans in the game, everything went swimmingly.
Yeah, and that's the thing when you look at now the offensive line, you break it down and the coaches look at it differently than the fans do. Fans look at the final score. Some fans get mad that the other team scored. That's just the way it is. But what did you see out of the offensive line? Did you see the depth come through, and did you like those new starters?
Well, results matter. And the yards that they got, 36 carries for 105 yards. That is, exactly what you have to focus on. But the story within the story would be that Brady Latham was out, and what that did was cause a couple of guys to have to move to different spots that are maybe not their best spots, but as the top 7 or 8 guys, you go into a situation, you try to get them experience. There were a couple of guys not making their first starts, but having their first extended plays at their new positions. It's one of those things we know with the Sam Pittman-led team that the offensive line is going to come together. They're going to get it, sooner or later. But I do think before I, just make a definitive, opinion about the offensive line, I'd like to see everybody where they're supposed to be. And, I think that's going to be the case this week. Latham is back. He started 36 straight games at guard. Another thing, there were a couple of high snaps, which, they think may have been the wet ball and all that. That's got to get corrected with the new center, Limmer. But, I do think that there is, and I said this during the preseason, I think the ceiling for these guys is higher than the line that they had last year. But it's certainly – was something that the fans focused on in the first game, and I'm sure the coaches did too. And I'm sure that they're going to run the ball like crazy this week, whether Rocket Sanders is able to go or not.
Did Patrick Kudus get a good grade? I know Chris Saxon, his uncle, as one of our members of the Club 250, and love to hear about him. But the whole team, he's a Razorback fan. But what kind of grade did Patrick get?
Yeah, they were excited about how he played, and they see him as a utility. Yeah, he's going to start at right tackle, but if he had to move to any of the other positions on the line, they feel like he can handle that. That versatility is something that they really like. I don't think anybody thought he would start at right tackle, but they think that's his best position. I thought he was, going to be a guard. It looked like there for a while, but they feel like that the people they've got in the spots along the line are where they're going to be best in the long run as they continue to maybe learn things inside or outside from where they played in high school.
Yeah, and when the maturation process for an offensive lineman coming into this league, and Patrick just turned 19, I think 3 weeks ago. That's a young guy. And you mentioned BYU is coming up. That's the third game. Those guys, a lot of them are 23, 24 years old. They've been out mountain biking around the world, getting a lot of doors slammed in their face for 2 years. I mean, you get in great shape. They're a physical type of team. And I know we're looking ahead because we can. So last year, Arkansas took care of business on the road. I thought that was one of the more underrated victories by an SEC team, because certainly the SEC needs some non-conference marquee wins. The league is off to an 0-3 start against ranked teams this past weekend. People act like it's no big deal. Oh, it's the first game. Let me tell you something. I saw things out of all three of those teams that lost that if I were a fan, or if I were a coaching staff, I'd have a lot of concern about. But again, that's why we pay these coaches a lot of money, and that's why they go back to practice. They'll get better. They should.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to watch both Kent State on their Thursday night game against Central Florida, where they lost 56-6, and then BYU in their ball game as well. These are two games that Arkansas, if they play well, don't have turnovers, or win the turnover margin like they should win rather handily, especially this week. And, the BYU, I think it's set up to where, that'll be a good last test before you go into conference play. But you are right in that, I think the best thing that is talked about after those first games is overreaction. I mean, in the first half of the Florida State game, I didn't even think they were even going to win the ACC. In the second half, I was ready to anoint them a possible, national title team. Yeah. Arkansas came roaring out of the gate the first quarter, put up 21 points, and in the second quarter, kind of hit a lull. So you just judge everything so quickly because you haven't seen, other than practice, what they're going to look like. We're going to get these next two games, and I think we have a better handle of what Arkansas is going to look like. They're getting some guys with injuries back, and that's always key. And I do, as I've talked about many times here, I do think they're better equipped to withstand injuries, but they sure don't need them. I mean, you're better if you have your best ones out there.
Yeah, and nobody wants to see that. And looking at I was talking to some Hog fans when we got back from Auburn Sunday night, and I told Jim Cherry's one of them, and Michael Sag that were over here, and we were talking about the game. You always talk about 1 through 44 for Arkansas. The last year was pretty good. They could play in the SEC. They were okay. It's that 45 to 85. I said Dudley now has moved that number, and we're all in the stock market and securities guys, and we look at charts and trends, and we crunch numbers. I said he now thinks 45 through 60 is strong, to where they've got 60 guys on that roster that could start if they needed to. And you said this on the show because obviously something was said off the record. I ain't saying it on the show. You know that. But that's impressive. I mean, 60, those numbers keep climbing, and the portal is hard to the portal's hard to get a grasp on. But that's high school, that's the portal, and there's 41 new guys on this roster. You saw enough in the first game to think, okay, as these guys play more, the Hogs have a chance to get better, a lot better as the season goes along? You've muted yourself.
I think there's 60 guys that I think they feel good about if they had to play and can play and win a football game. I don't think that was the case previously, and that's where I'm getting that from. After watching that first game, watching it on tape, which I think is the best thing. I watch games live, and my eyes deceive me at times. But if I watch it that second time around and I'm able to rewind it and all that, I get a better aspect of things. And I do think things like downfield blocking. Isaac Tesla, the wide receiver from Arkansas, we looked at him when we saw those catches, but you go back and you watch his blocking that allowed, the big touchdown pass there early on. Those type of things, I think, are the football IQ involved in the program. And you mentioned all the transfers, 17 portal transfers. I think most of them played last week and contributed, except the one guy who decided to drive 125 miles an hour to 76 miles, or 126 miles an hour to 75 mile an hour deal. And I thought it was funny. He was suspended last week. If he finishes off 5 different community service things this week, he will be eligible to play. Kind of taking care of that way. And I kind of like that. Setting out is one thing. Having to go out and do stuff because you screwed up is the way that, we were raised in the Dawson family out there in VOLS and in Newport.
I like that. I'm glad he did that.
Yeah, and I do think that they are at a point now. Now their 60 is not Georgia's 60. Their 60 is not Alabama's 60. Their 60 is not Tennessee's 60. But their 60 is closer than it was when Sam Pittman first arrived. A heck of a lot closer than when the Chad Morris era was lingering around here and they were sitting in the left lane with the blinker on because it sure as heck wasn't hammered down.
Well, here's some interesting observations, comments coming in from a Hog fan. Felix Grundy. I really liked the 2 linebackers for Arkansas. The freshman from Houston, Brad and Jaheim Thomason, transferred from Cincinnati. Jaheim had a hell of a game at the key and 8 solo tackles, couple of rushes. Brad was the freshman who's big, 6'3", 240, intercepted the ball, had a pick 6, really good players. Also, the backup quarterback, Jacoby Criswell, transferred from North Carolina. And he made a great throw back across the field to the freshman wide receiver. Hogs can win with him if something happens with big KJ, which hopefully doesn't happen. But Jacoby is a very good football player. Comments from a listener. I like that. Felix Grundy. That's a familiar sounding name.
Yeah, linebacker. And you talk about the starters you would think and going into the season and probably will be throughout the year. Jordan Crook and Chris Paul. They weren't even mentioned in that comment there. And that's a great thing. Because if your backup guys are flashing, one of them, as you said, had 8 tackles, the other one took it to the house, and he knew as soon as he got it where he was going. And that was good to see. I think that linebacker core is better than it has been. As I mentioned earlier, you're not going to have to play Grant Morgan 270 plays and Bumper Pull 269. You're able to spread that out a little bit. That's going to help them in the 3rd and 4th quarters. And I do think that, again, depth in most places, I think is better than it has been. And that's why I can sit here and say with a great degree of certainty that 1 to 60 is better than it used to be.
Yeah. And then that depth, I mean, very few teams have the 85. I mean, you've got Georgia, Ohio State, you've got Alabama, of course. But now I'm going to throw a stat at you. Monday night, we turned on the color TV set over here at the Cherry Farm. The neighbors had the blinds pulled up because you know how damn expensive cable is. So we were watching the game and hoping they just wouldn't pull the blinds down and go do the devil's work. We wouldn't be able to watch it. But 27-6, Duke beats Clemson at Wallace Wade Stadium, home of the 1941 or 42 Rose Bowl during World War II when they moved it from the West Coast to the Atlantic Coast. There were 56 4- and 5-star players on that Clemson roster. You know how many 4- and 5-star players Duke had on that roster? 2. I'm telling you right now, recruiting is like grocery shopping. If we go to, our favorite grocery store, to the Price Chopper or to Publix or Kroger, whatever, bring up, $500 worth of groceries home, leave them out in the back of the truck for a week in this heat. That's what happens when you bring in talented players and you don't develop them. Fair comparison?
Plus, I believe that Dabo is a really good coach. He's proven it over the years. But his philosophy, and I believe the kids say sus, it's cringeworthy, some of the things he does when he's off the field. But if you're not going to play the game, and the game is getting into the portal and correcting your deficiencies really quickly, then, his philosophy is not to do that. It's to recruit high school. He's recruited high school, but everybody else is playing the game. Everybody else is going out, and if you make a developmental mistake, if you make a personnel mistake, you're able to correct it a lot better if you'll get in the portal. Why he is so adamantly against that when everybody else is taking advantage of it, I think reared its ugly head Monday. I think his quarterback's going to be okay down the line, but they do not have the breakaway first team All-American type guys on offense or defense to me that you normally sit there and see. And they do get a better quarterback. There was no doubt. And obviously, Duke is coming on as a program. Mike Elko, certainly in his 2 years there has turned that program around. They've always been a middling and okay program. I thought their quarterback said it best. It's a two-dimensional school now, not just basketball, although baseball I think is pretty good as well. So, I do think that you have to adapt. Whether you're a businessman, a husband, a father, and certainly as a football coach, if everybody else is using the transfer portal and bringing immediate impact, and you're going to depend on your staff to develop freshmen, and it doesn't work out, this is what's going to happen. They're still probably going to have a very good year, but certainly not going to win the ACC this year, I don't think now.
Well, again, I like Clemson. I love to follow them. We have Richmond Weaver on here and Davis Babb, the CEO of IPTE. Talked to them a lot about the ACC, and Tommy Kane, Florida State, that Seminole brand. I grew up watching Florida State, and that you better watch out. Mike Norvell can flat out coach, and it's going to be fun to watch this. Listen, bottom line is, don't ever think your conference is the only great conference, because all these they all want to win, Dudley. You know that. And I think what's happening with Arkansas football is Sam Pittman is trying so hard to say there ain't no ceiling on Razorback football. You cannot continue to look out of the rearview mirror at the past, because I look at these historical trends of Arkansas. There are many times when over a 15, 20, and 25-year period, they're a top 5 program in America. I don't give a damn what league they're playing in. That's hard to do, Dudley. You know that. You know the history, but tradition never graduates. You cannot control you got 80,000 fans cramming in Reynolds Razorback Stadium. College football it's not all about, you're not going to see the other team, you're going to see your team. And as we graduate, more and more people have more and more alumni, and we lose people every year. I know that they pass on, but families go to football games. Families don't really go to pro football games, but you take your family to college games. And what I saw opening weekend, Dudley, is I believe in college football. I believe in America, and I love it. I'm not, and I wrote a little blog yesterday. I'm going to read it again just for that, its and giggles. But I wrote it, and I want you to tell me, because you're a great writer, and I don't write like you, but this is it. What if the national narrative on college football scheduled a funeral for the game we love so much, and the fans said, hell no, not on my watch. The portal and NIL are going to ruin the game. Fans can stay home and watch their 12-foot TV screens and drink cold beer from a cooler in their man cave alone. Remember these draconian PSAs 3 years ago? Stay safe, stay home, stay alone, and go broke safely. We, the people, are social animals. We require social interaction with other humans. I have never bought into the narrative that the fans would stay home. If you watch the games on TV this past weekend, or if you were fortunate enough to attend in person, you know that college football and the free market will correct all of this. Remember this, we're Americans. We've been through tough times before, and we're going to get through this. Season ticket sales are breaking records across the country. So please stop taking your marching orders from 6 multinational corporations on 3 city blocks in Manhattan. The rest of America feels differently. I believe in America, and I love her. I am Floyd R. Turbo America.
Yeah. God bless America. Now, the thing, one of the things I would say is that, you do this Arkansas game this weekend. Kent State is not a name program. I do think Kenny Burns, I like their coach, the former running back coach at Minnesota, and the BJ Fleck. He's got his, this is his first head coaching job. He had to go to UCF in game 1. He's coming to Arkansas in game 2. You're going to see this. I think there's 100 tickets left for this Arkansas-Kent State game. The fact that there are 100 tickets, just 100 tickets left for this game, I think is, adds into what you're saying. People love college football. And they were ready for it to come back. I mean, I always do the inside football thing a lot. The best play I saw all weekend, you mentioned Mike Norvell, was not a big touchdown run. It was not a big pass. It was not a great hit. The best play I saw all weekend, and I think it changed the game, was when Florida State had a 4th and 1, lined up, and it looked like they were just going to let the clock run out, take the 5-yard penalty, and punt it. But they got it down to 2 seconds, snapped it. The LSU defense was not ready at that point. They snuck the H-back out, got him the first down, and went. And I thought that was while we all talk about Jimmys and Joes, and you got to have the Jimmys and Joes to win the ballgame, the X's and O's remain a factor. And I thought that was the biggest different play in the game that really swung momentum. And you can always look back in close games when they are close. What was the play that did it? And I thought that was the one. Him having the gumption. Let's go with gumption. Him having
I love that one.
Run that play and let it go down, and you could see the LSU defense let up because they were sure that he was going to just take the penalty and punt the ball.
Yeah, the momentum is so big, the psychology. And Dudley, I hope you can stay on with us. We're going to take a break and come back. We're going to have Vince Ferrara from the Sports Animal up in Knoxville and talk some Tennessee football. Love having you on, obviously talking about the Hogs. But again, you are super talented. You can pivot like a Swiss Army knife and cover anything, and that's important. And again, you cover your school. That doesn't mean you're a fan. I mean, I know you do, but you're a journalist first, and I respect the hell out of that. By the way, love the Jimmy Buffett shirt. We're going to go to the Floribama tonight when we get down to Orange Beach, have a toast. Some friend of mine, Wesley Duncan, listens down in Fort Lauderdale, got to go backstage in 1978 and meet Buffett when he came to play at Auburn. Sent me a picture of his fraternity composite when he was a pledge at Sigma Pi fraternity at Auburn. James W. Buffett, Mobile, Alabama. And he went to McGill-Tulane. Now, somebody has since embellished on the outside of it, and it's written, I read it, it says, and they send you off to college to gain a little knowledge, and all you want to do is learn how to score. It's just a classic.
Well, yeah, I
loved him.
I had gone to see him 16 times. And I have enough shirts that I'm wearing one each day this week to honor him. I'll have one on at Saturday's game as well.
I love it, man. And like I said, I'm looking so forward to going to the Floribama tonight, have cold road sodas, and salute Jamie Buffett. We're going to do this. We're going to take a quick break. This is the ECS House Industries. Thank you, Chad House, the great folks over in Cherry Valley, Arkansas. So damn proud to be associated with you. And by the way, Labor Day may have been a holiday for most people, but by God, I was out here taking videos of the folks here in Arkansas. They're working. Talk to Donnie Raines, who works for Mr. Brenner, all these great people, Hill Farms. They're working 18 hours, 20 hours a day, sleeping in those tractors to get it in. If you ever doubt the people of America, get over here to Arkansas or anywhere. Go see these people that work these farms. They are the backbone of this country. If you've ever wondered why they're such a great country, look at the people. But House Industries, great sponsor. Love this stuff. Talking Razorback football with Dudley Dawson. We'll take a quick break and be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Dudley, Dawson, great conversation on college football. And Vince Ferrara, I think, going to be logging in momentarily over in Knoxville. He's been up since about 4 o'clock, I guess. Does the show 3 hours in the morning in Knoxville before he comes on with us, usually every week. And love to hear what he's got to say. Another thing about Arkansas is that Sam Pittman, you're right. You can tell he has fun, but those guys know when it's time to get to work. And just the coaches, he's got a staff of guys that have been in a lot of different programs. Hell, this is the 9th place for Sam Pittman. You know, I think that's very important because they've learned a lot of stuff from a lot of different people.
Yeah, and what's interesting is the Kenny Burns, who's, as I mentioned, the coach for Kent State, actually was recruited by Sam Pittman and recruited by Brett Bielema. And Brett Bielema has become one of his closer friends and one of his mentors, and has told him a lot of stuff about Arkansas, including how to do the hog call and all that. So I thought that was an interesting, thing going into this game and being able to, kind of see those relationships that coaches have that kind of cross lines. And as you mentioned, Coach Pittman was at Northern Illinois when they had that great season, and
the Huskies.
Yes. So it adds a little something to a game that really, when one team lost 56-6, the other lost 56-13, you can only reach for so much, as far as angles and stuff.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing about college football is we started playing the games, and NIL and the portal, they're there. I'm not fans of them. They're necessary evils that we got to deal with right now. But again, the free market, people, think about it. It will correct all of this stuff. And that's the way it works. But I just know this much. Saturday, or as they say down in the deep South, Saturday, I'm going to be at the Floribama watching some college football on the big old flat screen TVs in there. And that will be a lot of fun. And Dudley, before Vince comes on, because I want to make sure you do this, and I want you to stay on with us because I love having you on here with me when we talk football. Let people know exactly how they can follow you, keep up with all the great content that you put out. And I see you and Otis Kirk always being called on by Sam Pittman at the press conferences. That's impressive.
Well, one of the things before I get into that, since we're about to have Tennessee guy on, a little shout out to my friend Wes Rucker, who is a lightning rod over there with Tennessee. I know that some people love him, some people don't. That means he's doing a good job. And him and his son Hank, his wife has had a tough time with surgery. Thinking about you, Wes. Thinking about Hank, and just sending love. As far as my stuff, still working. Still, putting it out for hogbill.net. Excited about the first baseball scrimmage this Friday as well, ahead of the football game this weekend. Also, continuing to put out stories for fearlessfriday.com, our high school site. Got to go to a game Friday night, and just as I've said many times, I'm sure people get tired of hearing it. I just love the feel of the community coming together on a Friday night. That high school football that leads into college as well. That's the pure natural win-loss thing. But the community coming together, and also Dead Sports, DED Sports is my Twitter handle, and I might have mentioned that the downtrodden, not even having won 75 games, St. Louis Cardinals beat my wife's Atlanta Braves last night. We'll be rooting for the Braves in October.
Well,
we take our plan.
But you know that you're right. You're right. Cardinals and Braves. That's the western flank of our fans. Pretty much, Cardinal Nation. Eastern side and everything in between. It's a mix of the two. Braves country. So let's bring on Vince Ferrara from over in Knoxville. And great stuff, Dudley. Lots of comments coming in from folks about the Hogs. And I know Vince, what I love about Vince is he has been up since early this morning. And hopefully he's not dozing off. There he is. But sorry, Vince, I know you have been up working. And this is Dudley Dawson, hogville.net up in Springdale. Been covering the Razorbacks for a while. And you got it. By the way, did the family and everybody get through the hurricane that came through there, Tampa, the Nature Coast and North last weekend? That was last Thursday was pretty brutal. Last Wednesday. Got you muted. Whoa, okay.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. Yeah, a scare for sure. Tampa's had their fair share of those scares with those storms in the Gulf getting close to them, but thankfully they avoided anything, never even lost power. Some areas had flooding and others lost power. That was kind of the case throughout Florida and a lot of places, but dodged the initial projections of it going into Tampa Bay and the storm surge and all that. So Tampa, that area is not out of it yet. There's still, I think, plenty more that will flirt through before this season is over. But appreciate you asking it, and good to be on with you guys.
I would love having you on here. And we've been talking about, obviously, the Hogs and a lot of college football, the Clemson-Duke game, Florida State, LSU. Opening weekend was a lot more exciting than most people probably figured it would be. Tennessee goes to Nashville, Nissan Stadium. Looked like Neyland Stadium. I mean, you know, the Pride of the Southland band will form the giant T, and then the Tennessee Vols came out, and it was 49-13. Joe Milton III, Pahokee, Florida, the Muck. This guy's been in the system with Josh Heupel for 2 years. I think he's gotten better, but what were your takeaways from Saturday's win, which was of the big 4 games in the league, Tennessee was the only one that brought home a W?
Oh, he's definitely gotten a lot better. Has he gotten enough better for all the fans? Not yet.
Of course not.
It's really interesting to see the reaction to Joe Milton. There are some that, I've told you this, Rob, there are some that cannot get past what he was 2 years ago. And he's a much better quarterback. He's a much better guy, a more mature guy that's been through adversity and now has a different perspective on the other side of it and wants to seize his opportunity. He knows he can be great, and he knows he has something special with a great culture at Tennessee right now and how they're operating, how they're developing players too. He's got a lot of guys, a lot of dudes around him. So he's not going to mess this opportunity up. I've told you I'm a big believer in Joe Milton. And so I thought he played well. He had one rough series where he was inaccurate on 3 straight throws. And he had a drop on a deep ball, and then that's when a little bit of a lull came. One pass nearly picked off where you didn't see the safety. But, I mean, there are so many throws in a game, and that's going to happen to QBs of all levels. And for him to have a couple incompletions and then one time he didn't miss a safety or he didn't see a safety. Well, on his first touchdown pass to screen in the flat to Dylan Sampson, one of Tennessee's, they're calling him 3-headed monster at running back, which we'll get into. He had 4 touchdowns on the day. His first was just a screen pass in the flat on a 4th and 5 in the red zone. That was his 4th progression, 4th read in the progression. In a short area in the red zone, he was able to look, find Sampson, hit him accurately so he could catch it on the run and get into the end zone for a touchdown. That's something that he probably doesn't execute like that 2 years ago. So he knows the offense. He knows where his eyes need to be. He made good decisions in the game. Missed on a couple of throws, but he still hit on 70% of his passes, still has not turned the ball over. He's on a streak of over 200 passes going back to Michigan, where he has not thrown an interception. He protects the ball, he protects the football, He takes what the defense gives him. He's not trying to force it or show off his arm strength or be about him. I think he plays excellent, but I think some fans hold him to a little bit tougher standard than what they did Hendon Hooker or, frankly, maybe some other quarterbacks in the past at Tennessee.
Yeah, and let me point out the quarterbacks get all the love, all the women, they say, but they also get all the blame. And it is one of the things and fans make college football. Let me say that up front, which tells you I'm about to say something. And they make college football. Some of them just don't get it though. And you don't have to, everything you think you don't have to put on, I guess it's X now, or some other social media. I read one during the second quarter of the Arkansas game. It said that KJ Jefferson just is not throwing the ball very well. He was 12 of 12 with 2 touchdowns already, and he'd run for another one. I was like, God, calm down. What do you want? Perfection? I mean, did he throw? Was one of the 12 completions a little off, and that's how you're judging? Calm down, people.
Yeah.
Well, it is. We had Monday morning. We have a text line where people send in their comments, and every show has different ways of interacting with their listeners besides the phones. And we had back-to-back texts. One says, "You guys are carrying Joe Milton's water," and then the next one is like, "Would you fans stop and leave Joe Milton alone? He's going to be fine. He's going to be great." So it's kind of all over the place. I don't think they're asking for Nico yet, but I think it's going to be a short leash if he does have a bad game or if they lose to someone they're not supposed to. You got Nico there. Fans were chanting Nico in Nissan Stadium after he threw an incompletion, I might add, his only incompletion. And I thought Nico played well late in that ballgame to clean up. But, I don't think they were asking for him to replace Joe Milton at the time, but that is there. And I don't think the coaches aren't going to go to him quick, but I think there's some that were already decided on Joe Milton that are going to go there. But he's a much better quarterback, and I think plenty good enough for this team to have a really good year, especially with some of the other improvements we saw on this team in that game.
Tennessee's defensive line. Coach G, Rodney Garner, he's a hard ass. I mean, he and Bo Davis are 2 of the best defensive line coaches in the country. Bo Davis is now at Texas. He's bringing his guys to Tuscaloosa Saturday. Rodney Garner, you're always going to get a surge up the middle. Let's talk about Omari Thomas, big guy from Briarcrest High School here in Memphis, and the depth on that front 7.
Yeah, Rob, we've talked about it. We talked about it in the preseason and how that was one of the stories and developments of camp was that they had even more depth on that defensive line than they had last year. They're rotating 8 or 9 guys last year. They've got 6 tackles that they feel good about playing and did play with some early playing time in that game. I mean, there's plenty of teams that don't rotate 6 defensive tackles and feel good about playing them and not just in cleanup time. Plus, at end, Tyler Barron, who is the SEC Defensive Lineman of the Week, didn't even start the game. Dominic Bailey started because he earned it. It was very close in camp. And then at the Leo position, they go 3 deep and have another crazy superstar waiting behind them that's a true freshman in Caleb Herring. But James Pierce Jr. had an amazing first quarter, constantly had 2 sacks, 2 TFLs, 2 quarterback hurries. They could not block him. He was one of those really special second-year, twitchy, long, hybrid outside linebackers, defensive ends. They call them Leos in Tennessee's defense. That, Rob, we've talked about. They needed edge pass rush, and he was one of those guys that if he developed and put some weight on and strength and got the defense and confidence, that he could be special. 6'5", 242. He's got an NFL body. He's got NFL skills. Got to sustain it. A lot more to do. Consistency, all that kind of stuff. But man, he took over in that first quarter along with so many guys. Omar Norman Lott, the transfer from Arizona State.
Yeah.
He is really twitchy. We got a chance to talk to him yesterday for the first time. Amari Thomas, who is terrific, such a great leader. He had a sack in the game too. They have a lot of depth, and Rodney Garner is as good as anyone at developing players, and he has done so. They're easily 12 deep on that on the D line when they're a 4-down lineman, and they need it because the back end still a little bit of improvement, but you still need some help for them. They need it by not having to send exotic blitzes all the time and get exposed on the back end. One of the things in camp was getting pressure with their front four, and they did it in that Virginia game.
Dudley, you're hearing this, and I like that the defensive fronts, man. If you got depth on the front seven, you can beat anybody that you play.
Except for those who have more.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is a thing that you have to have in the SEC, and I think we've talked about it a little bit. That was not a strength of this Arkansas defense last year. Neither was the back end. It was just the linebackers really who were the biggest strength. They went out and fixed that, or at least made a great movement toward doing that. Brought in so many of these guys. They looked like a defensive line in the SEC out there just standing. And I can't always say that's been the case. Arkansas, for so many years, has had undersized, overachieving players. Now I think they have the size that you need. Now we'll see as they get experience as they go along. But these are guys that played for Louisville, that played for Cincinnati, that have played in big situations. And they have come in and were able to, Arkansas was able to get them and add to that, as well as the secondary, where those are two areas that they really, focused on in recruiting during the portal. And I think that that's going to pay benefits down the line, even if we didn't see it too much in that first game.
Well, Rob, on what Dudley was saying, there are some similarities between Arkansas and Tennessee, both of them with great quarterbacks. Offenses that have proven they can put up points, they can run the ball, but then defenses that needed to get better for them to take that next step. So good signs from both in their first games. And, you mentioned the transfer portal. That is something that Tennessee has benefited from as well. How about nine first-time transfers saw action in that game? And a bunch of them played key roles. Their place kicker, their starting left tackle, one of their two tight ends, their starting left guard, one of their rotating corners, their starting defensive tackle, starting Mike linebacker, and one of their rotating top wide receivers in Dante Thornton. So, it's a big factor. They've got a bunch of them that are in their second or third year at Tennessee as well that were transfers, the Brew McCoys and Kamal Haddon, starting corner, and others. So the transfer portal has been a game that not everyone likes, but you have to play the game, Clemson. And Arkansas has the best programs. If it's there, you got to work it, and it helps you plug some holes while you still need to recruit with those high school players as well.
Yeah, 16 played. 16 of those similar players played in Arkansas. As I said, the only one that didn't, I thought he was in a NASCAR race and got arrested for driving 126 in a 75. The fastest that anybody, any current or former TCU player went this weekend.
Yeah.
126 to 75 on I-49. Now I'm a guy that will drive at a decent speed, but if I saw that guy barreling down 49 at 125, I believe I'd call somebody.
Well, I'll say this. They drive like that on I-240 in Memphis all the time, drive right by police, and they don't even pull them over. I drive by doing 8 miles over. I'm getting pulled over. I'm like, okay, I did it. I'm sorry. But, hey, I got to throw this one at you, Vince. Tennessee, on the defensive front seven, you've got a lot of guys you can rotate out there. Last year, Tennessee had the second best rush defense in the SEC. But the secondary struggled, gave up about 289 yards a game, something like that. with a better pass rush almost by default. That's a de facto cure for, everything. The secondary, everybody's better. But if the quarterback can stand in the pocket and go to his primary, second, third, fourth reads, you're going to be in trouble. So report card, A, B, C, D, or F on what you saw. I don't care who you're playing. Everyone always says, oh, but they were playing this team. It doesn't matter. It was a game.
Let me say this, Rob, on a couple of good points that you made. First off, how do you view this game against Virginia? Yes, Virginia picked by pretty much everybody, 14th in the ACC. The just unspeakable tragedy they had to deal with last year in their season, cutting short and 3 players being killed. The emotion of all that, just not being on the same level in terms of talent. But what I saw and I was impressed on was compared to what I've seen from Tennessee in similar games against equal or lesser competition in non-conference. Not just, you can't tell they're really good because the team they're playing stunk. Yeah. No, I can tell they're improved based on how I've seen them play in other games and how the players look. It was the eye test for me. It wasn't a score or any of that kind of stuff. It was the eye test. They ran to the ball and looked fast, athletic, bigger, and more explosive, especially defensively. So many guys look different than what they did a year ago. Even if maybe a year ago they won by a greater margin, they didn't look the same way in and how they played. And that's what I looked at more so than stat sheets, game book, final score, that kind of stuff. The things that I saw, those things can translate when you play tougher competition. So that's why I was impressed. Really, it's for Tennessee, it's a little bit of a front six, Rob, because it's basically a 4-2-5. They're always in nickel at least. And they have 2 outstanding linebackers. They have better depth at that linebacker position, although it's young behind them. But Keenan Peely got a game ball from them. He wasn't just over the top in terms of his stats. But when I saw him adjust his line and everybody on defense, and they were like all in course. Georgia is so good at this. When their backers adjust guys based on what they see in the formation of the offense, they're like it's like they're all connected with the same rope. And they all move together in sync. And Tennessee was doing that. And so you'd see Peely move his guys, and then they'd get the snap, and he's right there in the hole in the gap, waiting on the running back to make a tackle because he knew what was coming. He's a smart kid. He's physical. He's big and can run. He's been a great addition in the portal. Aaron Beasley now is freed up to be able to just be fast and run to the football. He continues to produce at that other linebacker spot. That group is really good, and you're absolutely right. Can help them in the back end. Already saw the dividends in that in this game because guys just didn't have the time to run free in the secondary. And another reason why the secondary can be better, that some of those guys also looked bigger and faster, more explosive, had tighter coverage, but then they're just healthier too because they were really banged up a year ago. So those are all things that can contribute. I still have a little bit of concern and wonder about them just on how good they can be down the road against teams that not only can throw, but have a mobile quarterback. That's still a little bit of a TBD, but they definitely looked improved from a year ago. So that's a good starting point for them.
Hey, Rob, what's interesting is if you tuned into this show, you couldn't tell whether I was talking about Tennessee and he was talking about Arkansas because there's a lot of the same similar points. One of the things I wanted to point out, and there he made a good point, the first guy that Sam Pittman took care of or fired at the end of the season was a strength and conditioning coach. That was the first guy. The next day, they were like, "What are you doing? That can't be the biggest problem." Well, Ben Souders came in here and did a tremendous job in the offseason at getting these guys to have the right weight. You don't need to have a certain weight. You need to have the right weight. And it clearly looks like that. And that's the maturation process of Coach Pittman as a head coach. He realized it was not necessarily just the coaches he has on the field. It's the one that really spends the most time with them during the season and the offseason.
Well, and you want them to do the things in their training that lead to them playing better. and those kind of fits in their workouts. I remember Amari Thomas, Memphis kid, obviously Rob, as you've referenced, he talked about it in media days that, hey, we're not just working out to work out. We're not just running gassers or, doing cardio to do cardio, because that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're doing things that are functional to our respective positions. So it's not everybody does the same thing. That makes sense. That's why they're able to develop at their positions and have that translate into not just being in shape, but make them better football players, make them more explosive. And that is great that Sam Pittman, who is great, he talks to Jimmy Himes every year, every media gathering. Sam Pittman is as available as anyone. He's super classy every time I've seen him. So good for Sam Pittman to make that move, and glad it's paying off for him.
Yeah, the first two he let go and hired were the strength and conditioning coach and the nutritionist. Now, it's not really an old school move by an old school guy. That's a new school move by an old school guy. And clearly, just leading up to it, what they look like. It seems to have been a great move to hire Ben Souders as the new nutritionist.
Yeah, I mean, if your strength and conditioning coach, we hear this all the time, but if you're around a football program, you know this, they spend more time with the student athletes than anybody. Mm-hmm. And when they go into these student wellness centers where they've got, 18 food stations with chefs everywhere, bottom line, you go in there and you've got a red card, a green, a blue, and a yellow, whatever. It tells you what to eat and what foods to pair up. And, they're trying to get the guys down. Being bigger is not necessarily better. Wouldn't y'all say, guys, that most college football coaches would rather have an offensive lineman come in around 270 or 280 than 350? Because if he comes in 350 out of high school, he's probably looking like Fat Albert. I mean, it's just, a lot of hanging fat. But you bring those guys in and you develop them, and they're eating a better diet, because most high school kids just eat garbage. I mean, I don't care where they're from. They have a bad diet. And you start doing all this stuff. The strength and conditioning coach, I know Alabama was paying Scott Cochran, $800 or $1 million a year? And the director of equipment operations now, that's another huge job. So, I mean, look, Vince, Tennessee and W, you talk about in Arkansas, both programs are flush with cash, and it's unbelievable. But Vince, look, about to end this first hour, and Dudley, y'all, I tell you, this is an incredible conversation. Vince, let people know what you're talking about on the Sports Animal today, how they can keep up with you and follow all your great content, because this show, we are blessed to have great guests, great listeners and viewers everywhere. But it means the world to us that you share your time with us, because I'm getting comments going, where is this guy in Memphis? We're all over the place with the web and all, but we love Dudley and you, Vince, the content. It's incredible.
Well, I appreciate that. You can follow me on Twitter at Vince Sports, VINCE Sports. And I was in Nashville, so we got a ton of post game, and then we get so many interviews during the week. We had 4 players and both coordinators yesterday. Like, I don't know that not everybody in the SEC is doing that, making all of their assistants available, rotating, and then a bunch of players as well. I'll have a Vol Network pregame interview with Roman Harrison a little bit later on this morning. So no, I'm not going to bed. I'm going to continue to work and do stuff this week, Rob. And then on our website, on the podcast section, you can get all of those interviews. The video section, you can get all of the video versions of our interviews. And then I got a bunch of blogs this week during the college and NFL seasons. I do weekly predictions, and then also some analysis as well, former Tennessee players in the NFL. And then just so much more content on our website, 991thesportsanimal.com. And you can follow me on my YouTube channel as well. Just look for Vince Sports, same as a Twitter handle, and you can follow me in all the content there as well.
And
I've
Rob,
got that app on my phone.
Rob, remember, come Monday, it'll be all right.
Yeah, that's right. Jimmy Buffett, man. I mean, it's just, you're right. It's hard to believe, man. He's only 76 years old, but man, he'll live on. Talk about somebody's music living on. I mean, you're talking up there with Elvis.
And we got Margaritaville down the road in Pigeon Forge. May drive by there this weekend or next. So yeah. No matter what your background, you knew Jimmy Buffett, and music just makes you feel good.
Oh yeah, it absolutely does, man. All right, y'all hang on. If you got to go, you got to go. If not, we're going to have Will Gunter from over in Columbia, South Carolina, on with us right after this break. Another hour of talking college football, the game we love. Load up the family truckster full of the youngins and go to the games wherever you are. Doesn't matter who you're playing. Make it a family event. We'll be right back for the second hour.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you. Hour number 2 about to get started. And that was a great takeaway from Vince Ferrara covering Tennessee over at the Sports Animal in Knoxville. And of course, Dudley Dawson, hogville.net. And you just learn, I know I learn a hell of a lot every time they're on here. And you talk about defensive lines and how important getting that surge up the middle is. You better have it. And you're seeing, again, regardless of who the opponent is, the coaches certainly can take away a lot from it. And I think sometimes the takeaway is like, wow, we got a lot of issues. And, if we don't, if you don't have a defensive line, if you don't have a surge up the middle, you're not going to beat people. And even if you have a bunch of defensive linemen, Dudley referred to it, you can beat anybody you play, but if they've got more, it's going to be tough. Depth is the key. All right, let's bring in Will Gunter over there at ESPN 107.5, The Game in Columbia, South Carolina. Cool set there. Is that Gamecock in the background there? I like that.
Yeah.
You've been up since what time? 4:30?
Oh, 5 a.m.
5 a.m. Okay. So you do 3 hours statewide.
Yes. Yep. That is
Okay.
That is the new setup. We are into week 2 of that.
And where all are you in South Carolina?
We are in Florence and we are in Myrtle Beach. So what is it? 100.5 in Florence, and 100.3 the game in let's see here. 100.3 the game in Myrtle Beach.
Okay. Couple of cool places I'd like to. I'm heading to Orange Beach, Alabama, right after the show. So I'm ready to get down there. We're going to go to the Floribama tonight and have a toast, some ice cold road sodas, maybe a bushwhacker to Jimmy Buffett. He'd like to hang out there. And of course, the Floribama has been rebuilt several times over the years from hurricanes, whatever, but be watching a lot of college football, but appreciate you taking time to join us. I watched that game. We were down in Auburn after the game, watching it over at Dr. Waller May's house, the May Veterinary Clinic, one of our sponsors. Dadgummit, North Carolina's defense, that looked like a Gene Chizik defense. There was all kind of pressure coming from all sorts of places. What were your takeaways, the good, the bad, and the ugly from Saturday? Long season ahead. You know how South Carolina started off last year. You also remember how they finished. They got the same quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you start with the good on that, and that's that Spencer Rattler did pretty much everything he could to keep South Carolina in the game. He has 353 yards, didn't throw a touchdown, but didn't throw an interception either. And gosh, without him, who knows what that score is there in the game. And he made some incredible throws. I thought that was honestly, everybody's going to talk about Tennessee last year. Clemson was very good, but he threw some bad interceptions in the Clemson game. And that might have been as good a game as Spencer Rattler has played if you just focused on him. Unfortunately, going to the bad, you talk about the offensive line, and they got whipped. They got physically whipped. 9 sacks in the game. Give credit to Gene Chizik or somebody on North Carolina staff, because South Carolina gave up 2 sacks in the first half and then proceeded to give up 7 in the second half. And that's another reason why I kind of say that might have been Spencer Rattler's best game ever, because he never had a clean pocket the final 30 minutes of the game, and yet still gave South Carolina opportunities. They got down inside the 25 twice. That maybe would have changed the direction of that game, maybe would have altered something a little bit. But certainly, with that being said, it's a situation where they get Furman this week. Now, Furman is number 6 in the FCS rankings, but then you follow it up with Georgia, and Georgia's defensive line is going to be significantly better than North Carolina's. Maybe North Carolina made big strides this past year, but at least offensively, it was a night where they couldn't get the running game going. We had talked about the concerns with South Carolina trying to get the running game going. Well, it came to fruition. The offensive line couldn't block for Spencer Rattler, and give credit to North Carolina for what they did to the Gamecock offense in the second half.
Did you the offensive line played? Did you watch that game and come away with saying, I'm just so frustrated watching it myself. Same thing with LSU, Florida State. A lot of those guys didn't know who to block. They were just looking for people to block, kind of leaning in. They were worn out as the game went on. And offensive line play, we know it's the make or breaker.
We kind of talked about this in terms of, on the radio, we talked about this. You can have an offensive lineman that maybe is struggling, but they get called for a bunch of holding calls. They're getting beat, but as you just said, they're reaching out and they're holding. In this situation, I think there was only 2 holding calls for South Carolina. So it wasn't even a situation of them getting beat and at least trying to save their quarterback. They got beaten and turned around and told them, hey, the dude's coming, look out. And that's, again, there's so many things about the transfer portal era. And this is an interesting one because South Carolina played 3 lower level transfer portal offensive linemen on Saturday night. Played one from Western Illinois, played one from Yale, who actually did okay, and one from Charlotte. And you look at it a little bit, and I guess I'm getting a little off topic with this. That first Shane Beamer class, they took he got in there late, the early signing period. You had some kids decommit and go to other schools, and they only ended up taking about 13 scholarship players. And of those 13 scholarship players, I think only about 8 of them are still around. And then they took about 12 transfer portal guys, and some of those have graduated. Some of those have transferred and moved on. And so I say all that because, that first class is the one right now that should kind of be a little bit of the foundation of your team. Well, now you're relying on another crop of transfer portal players. And they, to put it bluntly, they stunk on Saturday night.
Well, that's the tough part about it. We talked about Arkansas and Auburn both have 41, 42 players, new players. That's high school and the portal. What's the exact number of new players on this roster for Carolina this year?
Oh, I'd have to go back and look. It's not ridiculous. It's not going to be in the same vicinity of the numbers that you just threw out. Let me see if I can get you a quick number here on that.
I just was throwing it out there because it's without, I can tell you this much, without those 41 new ones, Auburn might be looking at a 2 or 3 win season.
You say that, well, 2 of them got kicked off were kicked out of school. It is actually, it's a surprising number. I didn't realize it was this many when I look at it. We talk about newcomers. Now, not all these guys are contributing, but it's 33. It's 20. Okay. It's 11 transfers and 24, which is now 22 recruited freshmen.
Wow. Yeah. So Charlotte, it's closer to Columbia than it is to Chapel Hill. People brought that up. I'm like, you know what? The Carolina fans, this drives me crazy. When I'm watching a game on national TV and they're going, that's a long road trip. Carolina fans are all over South Carolina. They're all up in Charlotte and Gastonia. They're in Wilmington, North Carolina. They're everywhere. So what was the crowd like, in your opinion, Saturday night?
Yeah, it was. Well, there was South Carolina fans. Now, if this had been a basketball game in Charlotte, it would have been the opposite. Yeah. But this was a football game, and South Carolina fans were excited. about the game. They were the momentum and the energy coming off of the last 2 games, and then even throw in the bowl game, which was again probably from what I've heard was the best bowl game environment of all of them. That includes the championship game. And I had people explain to me, well, the championship game can get a little bit more corporate, so you get the point. People just there hanging out and watching. But Saturday night, again, South Carolina fans, it sounded similar to Williams-Brice Stadium. Maybe you didn't have the sandstorm playing, and you didn't have your typical white towels flying, but it was far more of a South Carolina crowd, especially when both teams came out of the tunnel. The South Carolina fans were able to drown out the North Carolina fans and the band by booing North Carolina and then cheering for their Gamecocks. And so it was South Carolina fans are going to travel. They love their football, and if you give them something to be excited about, they'll show up to attend a game no matter where it's at. You can put it out at Oregon State and Corvallis. They'll be out there for the trip and for the party and for the game. But with that being said, obviously it didn't really matter. The better team won.
All right, what are you going to be looking for against Furman? Because Furman up in Greenville always plays good football. I mean, that's solid program. They got a lot of tradition. I mean, it's a school that you can't take lightly. I mean, you remember when South Carolina lost to the Citadel? I mean, that was when Will Muschamp was there.
No, that was the final year of Steve Spurrier after he had quit. After he quit.
Okay.
Retired, but quit.
Okay, so that wasn't Muschamp.
And so it was the interim coach then, Sean Elliott.
Sean Ellis, that's right. Sean Elliott. Sean Elliott. Yeah, Sean Ellis was a great football player for Tennessee in the late 90s from Gaffney, South Carolina, where the big peach
I think
is.
it was in the upstate. I can't remember if it was they got all those powerhouses up there. Interstate
85, yeah. And then the Summerville, South Carolina is where the winningest coach in the history of South Carolina football coached, wasn't it? Wasn't drawing a blank on the name, but
John McKissick. Actually, my co-host Preston Thorne played for him in the late 90s.
Wow.
And so
Over
John
400 victories.
AJ Green from Georgia was there. So a lot of really good players would come out of it. Yeah, John McKissick is the answer to that one.
Yeah, incredible success there. All right, right now, so in the Furman game, I know you have a checklist of things that you look for in every game, takeaways. What do you want to see South Carolina do? Obviously, get the win, but where do they need to improve the most? And they can't do it all at once.
Well, number one, I don't know what we take. I say laugh, and maybe that's the wrong terminology to use, but I don't know what we learned from the Furman game and from the Georgia game. Furman, again, as I said, is number 6. It is ranked 6th at the FCS level. So this is a fairly good FCS team coming into Williams-Brice Stadium. But, I mean, you do want to see South Carolina off the offensive line hold up. I mean, I don't know. We were debating this morning. After what we just saw, what's the number of sacks on Spencer Rattler? 3.5. Boy, you want that to be under. You don't want to see Furman racking up 5 or 6 sacks there on Saturday night at Williams-Brice Stadium. So you just want to see the offensive line look more competent. I will say this. I want to see South Carolina recruited some 4-star kids on the offensive line, led by Big Tree Babalade, who projects as a tackle. He can't do any worse. He can't do any worse than what we saw in Charlotte. And so you kind of want to see these true freshmen be thrown out there with the new red shirt. I say it's new, but it's getting older now. With the red shirt rule, being able to play 4 games, let him see what they can do. And if he holds his own, let him go out and play Georgia. Play the young kids. Play the young kids and take your bumps and learn from it. And I tell you what, that was difficult on Saturday night to watch some older players really struggle. So play your younger kids. That's the first thing. And then can the offensive line hold up? And then secondly, the defensive line generated 9 quarterback pressures and ended up with 0 sacks. Excuse me, it was 11. North Carolina, I'm sorry, I had that backwards. North Carolina generated 21 quarterback pressures and had 9 sacks. South Carolina generated 11 quarterback pressures and had 0 sacks. So you do want to see some of these defensive linemen. Again, there's another freshman that was one of the top 2 or 3 freshmen they recruited, Desmond Umizulu, out of the Maryland area. Want to see him play a little bit more and see what he can do. He enrolled in January. So, what changes, I think, is the biggest thing I'm looking for. Don't just go out there with the same status quo that you threw out there against North Carolina.
Yeah. Well, question here from David Baker. Caroline and her buddies made the trip to Charlotte. I've known Caroline a long time. She goes to South Carolina, one of our members of our hunting club's daughter. And the running game for South Carolina, it's not going to prosper unless that offensive line improves. But we all know it's a long season, and you can't panic, and you can't get too high, too low, whatever after the first game. But you see things that if you don't improve them in the next game or two, they're going to be with you all season long. So let's talk about the running game and who stood out to you Saturday night and the future.
Who stood out in the running game?
Yeah.
Nobody.
Anybody? Yeah.
Nobody.
Say no. I didn't see anything.
I think I can't remember the exact phrasing of the stat or whatever it was, but I think if you'd have taken out the quarterback sacks, if you took out the lost yardage and the 9 sacks, I think South Carolina still would have had 2 yards rushing or something. So it was some ridiculous stat like that. No, there was nothing that stood out about it. It was hideous, to be honest. And they've got to figure it out. I mean, again, I don't now. I think you know that South Carolina is not going to be a team that can win a game by running the football. Can they get to the level that it's competent enough that scares you, that you're not loading up the box and sending 9 guys or however many you want to put out there and go after Spencer Rattler, because there's no fear of there's zero fear of a running attack. And that's what they're going to have to figure out. But that offensive line, that running game, it didn't go particularly well. Now, on the flip side of that, let's be honest. Gene Chizik you can question what you want about him as a head coach. Totally understandable. The guy has made a name for himself as a defensive coordinator, and North Carolina's ranked for a reason. They're 21st. They do have, Shane Beamer's pointed out, they've recruited well on the defensive line and at linebacker. I mean, these aren't a bunch of bums out there running around for North Carolina. I know statistically speaking, they stunk last year, but as Shane Beamer said, hey, we recruited a bunch of those guys. They're good players, Miles Murphy and Des Evans, and you can go down the list. So I think you're hoping your running game isn't quite as bad as it showed, and you're hoping North Carolina's defensive line is as good as they showed.
Yeah. Gene Chizik always dials up a lot of aggressive blitzes, and he's a hell of a coordinator. I've watched him at a lot of different places. He was at Texas in 05 and 06 when they won a national championship and had a 28-game, I think, winning streak or something that he did as a coordinator. I mean, as a head coach, yeah, some guys are great coordinators, but not great head coaches. And I think that's Gene Chizik. He can recruit. He can do a lot of things for you. Shane Beamer, he's a guy that gets really high and he was upset. Watched him on Feinbaum was giving him hell about saying the guys on the chain crew were eating a hot dog or something. I mean, he's just trying to take he'll figure this out. But of this team, the schedule that you've got, the South Carolina game against Georgia, September 16th. That's a critical game. It's only the 3rd game of the season. Again, you got a long way to go, but what do you want to see, regardless, win or lose, South Carolina do in that game? Like any minimum numbers, rushing, passing, sacks, whatever?
Come out alive. Stay safe. It's the game the following week that will define the season. Mississippi State will come to town. Look, never say never in life or in sports. Never say never. We've learned that if you watch sports long enough. Can South Carolina went in there in 2019 as a 25-point underdog, one of the largest underdogs, to ever win a game, 25-point underdog, and won the game. So never say never. But in this case, if the offensive line plays like it did against North Carolina, you hope that Spencer Rattler gets out of that game safe. You hope that the backup quarterback gets out safe. You hope that the linebackers don't get run over by some running back coming through the hole because the defensive line can't clog up the middle.
Correct. Yeah.
I right now, and I'm not trying to sound negative. I'm not trying to be all complete negative Nelly, but physically, South Carolina was not ready for that game on Saturday night. And so, I'm really not trying to be funny, but that game the following week against Mississippi State, because then you got Tennessee on the 30th. So you're the next 4 weeks is a game they should win this week. a game that they're going to be 3 to 4. They're going to be 3 touchdown underdogs. Then you get that Mississippi State game at home, and we'll find out next Monday what time it is, if it's a night game, if it's an early game, whatever it is. That game kind of is the one that might prevent you from being 1-4 at the end of September. And that's a deep hole to even get bowl eligible to climb out of, especially with, Texas A&M, with Kentucky, even with Clemson and their performance on Monday night. If you want to, South Carolina's really struggled at Missouri. I think they've lost 4 straight to Missouri. So, with all that in mind, survive Athens. If you can make it competitive, that's great. They hadn't made it competitive since 2019. It hadn't been competitive. So make it competitive. And again, try not. South Carolina lost some players. They lost a tackle on Saturday night for the season, lost a starting linebacker on the first play. Nick Evenwari, the safety, pulls his hamstring on the first play. You're not supposed to play one game and all of a sudden everybody is banged up and you got 2 starters out for the season.
Yeah. Well, what you're saying, South Carolina's got to pull together as a team and not point fingers. I mean, because now you got Furman, then you got Georgia, then Mississippi State, then you got to go play up in Knoxville. I'm just kind of saying what you said, but wow, you do not want to come out at 1-4. You ended up the season strong last year. Big time wins, but it's a different year, different chemistry. I look at teams, week 1 to week 2. Really, with y'all, it's going to be to week 3 is the progress. But you got to get the win Saturday. Nothing changes the atmosphere like winning. Yeah, I mean, that's a guarantee, isn't it?
Yeah, things would be a lot different here if South Carolina again converts those 2 trips inside the 25. And again, there was a huge 4th and 4 play, a huge 4th and 4 play there to start the second half after South Carolina recovered the onside kick. That wide receiver just drops the ball, and if he catches it, maybe he turns upfield, and he would have definitely gotten the first down unless he tripped. Maybe he runs a lot further. Maybe he scores. Worst case, they're in field goal range, and you can tie the game. So there's things that you can say, all right, if this play goes a little different, if that play goes a little different, maybe we're having a totally different conversation today. Maybe we're talking about beating Furman and being a top 20 team, going to Athens, but those problems would still be there if those things had worked out. The offensive line would still be struggling. They'd just be masked by being 1-0 as opposed to 0-1.
Yeah. And in the SEC is just a league. It's a line of scrimmage league. I mean, that's what bottom line. All right, let's switch gears now and just talk about some of the other games that you saw, because not only do you cover South Carolina, you cover Clemson, you cover SEC, you cover a lot of schools. That Florida State game, I'm not surprised because I watched Mike Norvell here in Memphis for 4 years build Memphis up, 16, 17, 18, and 19, the foundation of which had been built by his predecessor, Justin Fuente. Goes to Florida State, struggles early. He didn't get the Florida State job because things were great in Tallahassee. People always forget why you are the new head coach. And he's been building them. Last year, I thought early in the season, after the LSU game, I thought they'd win 9 or 10 games. They went 10-3. I thought this year they had a chance to win the ACC. And LSU, top 5 team, everybody excited about them. But I couldn't understand. Last year, Tennessee beat them soundly at home, 40-13. But they go on the road. The mystery game, I know they beat Alabama at home by 2. But they went on the road at the end of the season and lost to an A&M team with 6 consecutive losses that was on their deathbed, 38-23 in College Station. And they beat Purdue's brains in the bowl game. That's not unusual. But your thoughts on Florida State and LSU?
Well, to go back, that Florida State game, again, let's some of these games, sometimes I think we get a little tricked into believing what we want to believe. Florida State it's tied. There's 3, I should say 3 minutes. They scored with right under 2 minutes, or right under 3 minutes is when Jordan Travis gets in the end zone. But that game, that's a tight game. And it looks like it's a tight. Well, it's 24. I should say it's 24-17 going into the fourth quarter. And you're looking at it going, hey, this is what we wanted. Close game Friday night. This is going to be Sunday night. This is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a blast in the fourth quarter. And things go haywire. things just go haywire. These things sometimes happen in college football. All of a sudden, Florida State gets going. There's a turnover. There's, all kinds of stuff kind of goes wrong there. LSU is fighting. They're trying to figure out something. What was it? It was the Jalen Daniels interception. Then Florida State capitalizes on that. It's all of a sudden it goes quickly. It goes quickly, Rob, from, hey, man, we got a heck of a game on a Sunday night between two top 10 teams to, Florida State's up 2 touchdowns, and then LSU's got to go for it. They know they're in trouble. They don't get it. Florida State capitalizes again, and all of a sudden it's 3 touchdowns, and everybody's going, all right, where's the clicker? Let's go to bed.
Yeah.
It was I don't have it in front of me, but I would guess, what do you think? 8 minutes that thing went from tied to LSU up 3 touchdowns. Does that seem about right?
Yeah.
I don't have the chart in front of me, but it goes from the 3-minute mark. It's a tie 3-minute mark in the third quarter to, I would guess, about the 8 or 9 minute mark. And all of a sudden, it's a matter of minutes. Just things go haywire. So I don't put too much into it. LSU's a good football team. Florida State got some breaks. Florida State's a heck of a team. There's 11 games left. Shoot, South Carolina beat North Carolina in 2015 in Charlotte. And North Carolina went on to an 11-1 regular season, and South Carolina finished 3-9. These first games, mistakes are going to happen. That's what happens. Go back to last year's Florida State LSU game and talk about mistakes. But I think both teams will be fine. It's just one of those situations where LSU had a catastrophic 8 or 9 minute sequence.
Yeah. Yeah, and most games are decided on 4 or 5 plays. And we've got Jacques Doucet coming on WAFB Channel 9 in Baton Rouge with us here. He's in the holding pen, about to come on here with us. And stay with us if you can, Will, because he's got also, we're going to talk about a documentary that he and his team are putting together to be released October 15th about Cecil the Diesel Collins. And I've had a lot of people texting me about Cecil the Diesel. Quentin Stein said their high school down there in DeRidder has a big rival with, I think Cecil's from Leesville, Louisiana, but we're going to do this. We're going to take a quick break and we're going to come right back and we're going to get into it with what's going on in college football, LSU. We've been talking South Carolina, but Will, if you can stay with us, we'd love to have you because I love your insight. Still remember how much fun I had with Mr. Bill Hancock of the CFP when you asked that question and the skies lit up with lightning. So maybe you can do that again. We'll be back right after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Back here with Will Gunter's been with us, ESPN 107.5 The Game in Columbia, South Carolina, and Jacques Doucet, WAFB Channel 9 in Baton Rouge is with us right now. And, the good thing about a game like this, Will and Jacques, is that fans don't overreact and get upset about it. They just kind of take it in stride like, gee whiz, Tiger's going to be okay. But I was watching the game with an LSU friend the other night and from Lake Charles, and he was like, long season ahead. Remember what happened last year in game 1. But, Jacques, I know you and the crew were over in Orlando, what I call the capital city of the Witness Protection Program, because if you can meet someone who is an old family from Orlando, unless they're circus people or carnies, you're in rare company.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, it's a nice place to go for a bowl game. I went there. Obviously, LSU played in the bowl game 8 months ago. Palm trees, sunny, it's warm.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're not participating in any of the Disney madness, perhaps you may have to find something else to do.
All right, let's get your takeaways, man. Will and I were talking about it just now. The offensive line. What jumped out at you the most? And the Harold Perkins experiment.
Well, it was a close game, back and forth game. LSU, despite being first and goal at the 1 yard line on the first drive of the game and getting no points, despite a 4th and 1 at the Florida State 11, getting no points in the first half, they still led 17-14 at halftime. In the second half, Florida State and their big wide receivers, Keon Coleman, who, twisting the knife on LSU fans, is from Opelousas, Louisiana. Same hometown as Devery Henderson, who caught the Bluegrass Miracle for LSU many years ago and who played for the New Orleans Saints on their Super Bowl team in glory years. Dominated LSU with 9 catches for 122 yards. He was making the contested catches, the big plays. LSU was dropping some routine passes. And then by the time Jaden Daniels threw the ball to Malik Neighbors when he slipped and fell and it was picked off, and Florida State punched it in for a 2-touchdown lead, it was church. Certainly LSU, a lot of fans saying, did the team quit? Did they give up? When you get outscored 31-0 in the second half over one stretch, that doesn't look very good. And so with social media these days and whatnot, I think one of a coach's biggest challenges is after a game like that, telling the players that a idle mind is a devil's workshop and to stay off there and to not read everything in the chat rooms and what's being said on them on different platforms, because that can really start to tear at the fabric of a team these days, as opposed to the old days where all they heard was their mamas and daddies and girlfriends and family and everything. Now it's just really out there for everyone to go off. And so, yeah, when you're preseason number 5 and you've been talking about winning a national championship and the women's basketball team does it and the baseball team does it, maybe there's a sense of entitlement that we're just going to show up and it's going to happen for us too. And certainly I think maybe the bowl game that LSU played and beat Purdue 63-7 when Purdue had a kind of a JV team out there like LSU did in the Texas Bowl 2 years before, a year before, because of opt-outs and whatnot. Maybe we didn't pay enough of close attention to, hey, they went to Texas A&M regular season finale and played a pretty bad game, and Georgia beat them up in the SEC championship game. So, look, it's all still out in front of them to an extent. I think the playoff talk and all that needs to go away for a long time. They're going to be favored in every game moving forward before the Alabama game, and if they can somehow win all those and be 7-1 at the bye, and when the first college football playoff rankings come out, then we can reset and take a look at it from there.
Will?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of good points there. Obviously, that Texas A&M game was a bit of a shocker last year, but, it's a good team. And I go back to what I said. I looked real quick there during the break, and, yeah, it was about a 10-minute period. It's 17-17, and Florida State punches it in with 2:45 to go in the third quarter. And, man, again, we're going to the fourth quarter, and you're like, boy, this is what we were hoping for on Sunday night. 2 top 10 teams, and they're back and forth, and 2 really good quarterbacks. And, all of a sudden things – again, I forgot about that, about the interception too, the fact that he slipped. It's kind of a freaky play. Not a great pass, but kind of, a freaky play there. Man, that thing could have gone a lot of different ways. And obviously Florida State's able to take advantage of it. And they go up 31-17. And then, like I said, Brian Kelly's looking around going, man, we got to put some points on the board. And they go for it on 4th down. They don't get it. And Florida State punches it in. Like I said, we all look around and go, all right, it's bedtime. It's 38-17. Let's get ready for Labor Day itself. So, I think you don't make too much. It's not like they got beat by Clemson or by Duke 28-7, and it didn't even look good. It's totally different. This is a good Florida State team. This is a Florida State team that right now looks poised to win the ACC, make a run at the college football playoff, and I think he makes a good point there about get to that first college football playoff ranking 7-1, rebuild the confidence, and know that Alabama game is basically an elimination game for the college football playoff.
And Jacques, you look at LSU's defense. No Mason Smith, who was hurt last year in the first game against Florida State, missed the rest of the year. Big defensive tackle. Harold Perkins moved to middle linebacker from edge rusher. And my phone is blowing up. My screen just cracked. I'm going to have to get a new one from LSU fans texting me and saying, why is he not an edge rusher? He's a natural at that position. Obviously, the coaches see something or know something that we don't. That's what they get paid for. But you think maybe he's going to be moved back out to the edge? I mean, you know football, you know Harold Perkins, you know LSU.
Well, I think I know things in a decent manner, but I do know he had no quarterback sacks, he had no tackles for loss, he didn't even have a quarterback hit the other night, and that is not a typical Harold Perkins stat line. Now, I made the analogy like a year ago. If he was a basketball player, he's a guy that comes in, makes a bunch of threes, gets the crowd all hyped up, and then in the offseason they said, all right, son, we need you to pass the ball more. We need you to play some defense. We need you. They're trying to make him a more complete player. You can't just go in there and shoot a bunch of threes. And so maybe that doesn't work. Maybe he is just a three-point shooter, and that's, do one thing and do it well and go attack that quarterback. I mean, certainly he played a huge part in LSU beating Alabama, beating Ole Miss, their biggest victories last year. So I don't know if they don't feel confident in the other middle linebackers on the team that they can't do it. Brian Kelly yesterday at his press conference discussed we have to think about the next level. We have to think about where he projects and this and that. But that was the biggest takeaway. People who know football saying, how did LSU negate themselves, their best defensive player? And that was the big people scratching their heads. When they talked about it in the offseason, we were like, okay, we'll see how this goes. And the first chapter was not a good one.
Yeah, it's like when you tell a quarterback who's a real mobile quarterback to stand in the pocket and complete more of his passes. I mean, you got to let them do what they're great at, don't you, Will?
Well, I don't like that comment, Brian Kelly, thinking about the next level. You're not paid to get guys to the NFL. Yeah, I mean, you're not paid. That's the John Calipari right now is making a lot of money off of getting guys to the NBA. But let me tell you, there's Kentucky fans that have had enough. They were ready to run him out of Lexington last year, and obviously they still to an extent are. And his excuse is, hey, I'm trying to get these guys to the NBA. We got all these NBA guys, and Kentucky fans are going, we got one championship with you, singular, one. You weren't brought here to get guys to the NBA. Take 15 walk-ons that will never play. You win us a championship, and that's the concerning thing to hear. When you say, "Hey, we're thinking about guys at the next level," we got to look ahead to how they fit in the next level. Now, with that being said, Harold Perkins is a freak athlete. Was there as you just mentioned, was there a defensive game plan that they thought was going to free him up to go sideline to sideline to track down, to track down Jordan Travis in different situations, and Florida State threw him a curve? Who knows what the game plan was? Who knows exactly what they were thinking? They're not going to admit it now. They're not going to come out and say, oh, yeah, we thought, but I think that's something, these coaches are smart. They get paid lots of money. There was some concept there of, hey, if we put them in the middle, maybe we can shadow Jordan Travis and eliminate that. Maybe there was blitz plays that they had lined up for him that all of a sudden simply didn't materialize. That's something where you like transparency, right? Like honesty. Hey, tell us what you were doing, why you did that. Don't tell me when you were thinking about the next level.
Yeah. And I agree with what you said about these guys saying their job is not to get them to the NFL. I get, Jacques, you know this. These guys come out and have a good freshman year. Sophomore year, they kind of slump a little bit. That's not unusual. In the third year, they go out and have a good 3 or 4 games, and those agents are whispering in their ears, kind of pull over and take it easy, fake injuries. I'm sorry, but it happens. I hate that. I don't really care about the NFL. I want my college team to be the very best it can be. And I love your take on that, Will. And Jacques, again, 2-time Sportscaster of the Year in the state of Louisiana. You don't get that because you're lucky. You work your ass off. And by the way, we're going to have to get in. I've seen the teaser about Cecil the Diesel Collins. You remember him, Will? I mean, that guy was one of the most fierce warriors I've ever seen. So we're going to talk about that in a minute. But let's get back to your thoughts on this LSU team.
Well, they're going to play Grambling this weekend. There's nothing they can really do this weekend that's going to make anybody feel any better. No disrespect to our friends from Grambling and the great HBCU and all the great tradition with Eddie Robinson and Doug Williams and all that. But, this is the easiest game on LSU's schedule. Really, they're going to have to hit the reset button 2 Saturdays from now when they're in Starkville for an 11 a.m. kickoff against Mississippi State. And from that point forward, it is not. And sometimes in September, you get those cupcakes. That is not the case here with this schedule. I mean, they're going to go to Mississippi State. They come back to play Arkansas. They go on the road to play Ole Miss. They go on the road to play Missouri. They come back home and play Auburn. All those games are winnable. All those games are losable if they play the way they did in the second half against Florida State. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they navigate this thing. And Jaden Daniels, I think, played a pretty good game the other night. He was a victim of a lot of drop passes, including the one at the end of the third quarter. Brian Thomas is a local kid. Jaden Daniels said he could have thrown the ball a little bit better, but Brian Thomas got two hands on it, and a third-year SEC wide receiver probably needs to make that catch. So I think Brian Kelly is getting a lot of criticism and everything right now. LSU fans did not travel to that game, by the way. Last year, when Florida State came to New Orleans, they brought 35,000 fans, and it was like a 55-45 split, maybe 60-40 in favor of LSU. This year, not many LSU fans made that trip. It was really a true road game. Kind of felt like you were in Tallahassee. So next year, LSU opens up the year in Las Vegas against the USC Trojans and Lincoln Riley. And then that'll be very interesting with the two head coaches in the game, the two guys that were linked to the LSU job before LSU hired Brian Kelly a year ago. But anyway, that's where it is right now. And, we'll just have to – Coach Kelly will have a teleconference here in about 20 minutes, and then he'll have his first not his first, but he'll have a coaching show Thursday that'll be interesting.
And, both of y'all know this. These games, your first one's Florida State. That was one you've been pointing to all year. You've got Grambling, and then before you know it, you're going to be playing in Starkville. So the season, we count the hours till it starts, and then it gets here, and it's like watching a fire just catch and just whoosh, all of a sudden it's fully engulfed the house. Will?
Yeah, it's I don't know if it's the right thing to do, but looking ahead, because again, not exactly the best college football weekend. You do have Alabama, Texas, maybe Mississippi, Tulane lives up to something, but it was an odd weekend this past weekend where your best game was Sunday night, or your highest profile game was Sunday night. Saturday, thank goodness Colorado and TCU put on a show early on to keep us entertained. The 3:30 slate, I think I may have taken a nap or something. I don't know what I was doing during that 3:30 slate. It was not very fun to watch. Auburn and UMass is not having me flip over to ESPN. Sorry, Rob, that's not the game I'm tuning in. I know. I'm stuck watching that fantastic Ohio State offense against Indiana. That was a barn burner of a game. But yeah, we still don't have like a great slate this weekend. So now you're kind of looking ahead to September 23rd, where I think there's a bunch of I think it's September 23rd, if I'm thinking correctly, is a good lineup of noon to 10:30 games. So you're right. It zips by once it starts.
And that's the tough part about it. Jacques, what's been the reaction just of most of the LSU fan base after this first game, considering they lost this same game a year ago in New Orleans by 1 point and the way it ended? I remember the reaction of the fans last year. It was a little over the top.
Yeah, I mean, how do you gauge that, though? I mean, the people that are in the Facebook comments and on Twitter, is that really the person you meet on the street who might have a more leveled take? I think a lot of people, not many people, I mean, and I meet many people in person that are on these obviously social media platforms to recognize, but there's a lot of people, they don't go on there to be positive. You know what I'm saying? No. And even on Twitter, I could say, wow, it's a beautiful day outside today. What a wonderful day. Well, what makes you say that? Who makes you an authority on that? So those are the kind of things that get said on social media, just people that are, and maybe not even people, I don't know, robots or bots, whatever they call them. But, so that's kind of what you get. But I think people are disappointed. It was a big buildup. It was a top 10 matchup, and they got pushed around. It was very similar to the end of Coach O in 2021 when they went out to UCLA in the Rose Bowl, and LSU brought all these fans out to this majestic setting at the Rose Bowl in the mountains. And here we go. We're going to bounce back from that Frankenstein COVID season and get things steered more back towards 2019. And then they got punched in the mouth by UCLA, and then Coach O was fired, whatever it was, 5-6 games into the year. Brian Kelly is not getting fired anytime soon. He's in the second year of a 10-year contract. And you just see these ludicrous things. I mean, Brian Kelly's got a 30-year record that is pretty solid. And then, Deion Sanders goes out, wins one game, and, somebody in a Facebook comment, let's swap coaches. I'd love to have Deion coach our team. Like, are you serious? So,
no.
That kind of stuff. But
hey, look, well, Will, I know you got to bounce out of here. Let people know how they can keep up with you and all your great content. And as always, appreciate you taking time to share with us, Will.
Yeah, definitely look forward to next week. Twitter @Will, WIL, Gunter, GUNTER. And of course, if you're You can check us out on the 1075thegame.com app, or you can go to your app store and download the 1075 The Game app and listen to us there wherever you're watching and listening this morning. Or if you're going through South Carolina, you can hear us on 100.3 in Myrtle Beach, 100.5 in Florence, and 107.5 The Game in Columbia. I'm going to have to stop extending into markets. I'm going to run out of numbers and start adding phone numbers in there. But yeah, look forward to it next week.
All right, man. Take care. Great stuff as always. Jacques, what I love about you in TV is because, I mean, the time that I spent doing it is an intern and then as a reporter, I understand what you're doing, and it's incredible. You do 4.5 minute sportscast in case, unless some big story breaks in and it can just do the windshield wiper to you. But you're not the norm. You did the great 30-minute segment with Brian Kelly. You put a lot of stuff out on social media. Cecil Collins. I've seen the documentaries about Marcus Dupree out of Philadelphia, Mississippi, Neshoba County, the best that never was. We've seen the 30 for 30s on Bo Jackson, Herschel Walker. And this is a Cecil Collins documentary just based on the teaser that you sent me on your way home from Orlando Monday. Man, I remember it like it was yesterday. And I'm pretty sure he's from Leesville, Louisiana. And only an idiot savant knows this, but that's where Eddie Fuller's from, who caught the ball from Tommy Hodson, the earthquake game in 1988.
Very good.
And if I remember correctly, and if you ever see Eddie Fuller, ask him, I think his father, the orders were he was going to be transferred from Fort Polk over to Fort Benning, which is a mere 35 minutes from the Auburn campus. And Auburn was hoping that they could sign Eddie Fuller. They wanted that kid really bad. And then the orders were changed. And he stayed at Fort Polk. And I was there on the 50-yard line, first row in 1988. The earth shook, man. It was like, that AC/DC song, man. Shook me all night long. I mean, I still remember I drove from Baton Rouge to Hammond to the hotel. And I don't think my buddy Ray and I said a word to each other. We just kind of had that blank stare. But you're capturing something, history, what could have been, and that's Cecil Collins, who, by the way, wore number 34.
Yeah, and you referenced the Marcus Dupree documentary. It's different, but it's the same in the aspect of, if you ask LSU football fans the biggest what-ifs in LSU history, if Cecil Collins isn't at the top of the list, roll call is very short. And for those who don't know, he played basically only 3.5 games his entire LSU career. He played in those games in 1997 and put up nearly 600 yards rushing in that short period of time. And the Auburn Tigers, I think it was 234 in Tiger Stadium. Auburn won the game. Damian Craig was the quarterback, led them on a late drive and scored with 40 seconds left to go in the game, something like that. And then Cecil broke his ankle at Vanderbilt shortly after that, and then had a lot of off-the-field issues that eventually led to him serving 13 years in prison. And there's the parallel between Kevin Falk, who was on the LSU team at the time, who is still LSU's all-time leading rusher, who had resurrected the LSU football program in 1995 after 6 straight losing seasons. And looking at Kevin Falk, who spent 13 years in the NFL, who's in the New England Patriots Ring of Honor, who has 3 Super Bowl rings, played in 2 other Super Bowls. And there's Cecil Collins, who a lot of people said, this guy's better than Kevin Falk, spent 13 years in prison. So it is a powerful story about life and life choices. And now Cecil Collins being 46 years old, where he is today and what he wants to do with the rest of his life, and how those mugshots and everything that have circulated on the internet for all these years, he wants to do his best to remove himself from that and to start at something new and be impactful to people, and perhaps, tell them, teach kids especially about choices and what to do and what not to do. But we're telling a story. We're not glorifying. It's no different than, I don't want to make going into a movie and seeing Oppenheimer or whatever.
Yeah.
We're telling a story. We're not glorifying. We're not trying to whatever. But I do think that when people watch this and when they finish watching it, they will have a new perspective on him because he has been labeled a monster. He has been labeled a lot of very negative things over the years. And perhaps it is time at least to open up the conversation of, hey, look, this guy's been 13 years in prison when some other people hit people with cars and kill people and spend 2 years in prison. What he went to jail for, he served his time, he served his debt to society. He's been out of prison for 10 years. Where is he at now? And that's the story that we're going to tell.
Well, credit to you for doing that because, when people serve their time, it's time to move on. And you got a lot of people that can never let go. Just the constant reminders like you. And again, I go back to a friend of mine knows Sherman Williams, who played at Blount High School in Mobile, former Alabama running back in the mid-90s. Went to prison in Forest City, Arkansas, federal prison, 13 years. And this friend of mine talks to him a lot. And he said, and that's not saying that you and I are great, but at the same time, he listened to sports radio. That's what kept him sane. He had a transistor radio, got to listen to it out of Memphis. And that kept him going. Just that, people, just sports are the lessons of life. And he and David Palmer, the Deuce, now are going around doing a lot of good things. And that's Cecil Collins. And you think about Billy Cannon. There's lots of stories. I am really proud to have you on the show talking about doing the story about Cecil. He went to prison, like you said, for 13 years for stuff that today people may not even serve time for.
Yeah.
And it's a story about what could have been. Isn't that what college football always is? I mean, fans go back to every game, even if their team hadn't won a national championship in 60 years. There's always the hope, and a great player gives them that kind of hope. That's what Cecil Collins did. And it's always going to be James Dean and, Patsy Cline. They both died at 29. And so did Hank Williams.
Right.
Very young.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of the mythology too, right? Yeah. From my generation, 30 years ago, Nirvana comes out, Kurt Cobain, he kills him. He kills himself in 1994. And as dark as it may sound, people who die at a young age, their status is elevated. Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison, these rock stars, Janis Joplin. I think there's like a group that all died at 26, 28, the same age, 27. And so they never had their decline where they were playing the casino, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so that with Cecil, that is the fascinating thing, that a guy that only played 3.5 games at LSU and half a season in the NFL, that people who played with him like Booger McFarland, Kevin Falk, Ryan Clark, who spent, a decade or more in the NFL, say that's the best guy I've ever seen. And so that's where it started. That Booger McFarland during COVID, where we couldn't do anything, I started doing retro stuff, and Booger McFarland says that. I'm like, wow, okay. And so after all these years of selling, I had nothing. I got none of the money, but WAP's got a great archive system. That documentary, Shaq and Dale Brown, that Skip Burtman documentary, all those things they did, they used a lot of WAFB footage in there. And so I'm thinking, well, let's make our own for once. Let's do our own documentary. We got the stuff. Let's do it. And so that's where it started, and that's where we're headed. October 15th on WAFB, and then it'll be posted to YouTube and to our website.
Well, I mean, it really is just looking at it. You've got a great team around you. And you talked about, not having to play the casinos. If I was going to do a documentary about the rise and fall, if you ever watch MTV or VH1, that it's always the same, narrative about how man goes to the top and then they crash and burn. And I would say from Red Rocks or Madison Square Garden to the Ramada Inn Lounge. Had a friend of mine up in Bismarck, North Dakota, a real tourist destination for people, said, he goes, I was over in here in Bismarck over at and maybe I think he was in Mandan, but went to the Ramada Inn. There was some function going on there, and I heard this noise, and I'm like, God, this sounds familiar. And in the Ramada Inn Lounge, this was several years ago, it was Vanilla Ice.
Oh, there you go.
But he's come back, but look, we're about out of time. I just got to say, that's what the local guys can do. And it's so critical. I talked to a friend of mine that's a news director, a general manager of a CBS affiliate over the weekend when I was down in Auburn, and he used to run the station I was at Channel 3 in Columbus. Just talk about the young reporters today. So many of them, they don't get it. They can't carry a stand-up more than 34 seconds without tossing it back to the station. That's a gift that you have. I mean, we could talk right now about Tulane, Holman Stadium, the game coming up, this weekend. That's not your school, but about Tulane. Those people are pretty excited about it, but you're so versatile, and that's a credit to you. And I know that Oakley McFerrin was on the show with us, a young man that you met up there at Media Days, and he goes, he really wants to come get a tour of the TV station when he comes to Baton Rouge. He goes, I can't believe that guy would spend time talking to me. That just blew his mind. And when Audrey and I met you at Media Days in Atlanta last year, you're a pro, and I want to say thank you for taking time to come on this show. And I cannot wait to see this documentary. We're going to be talking about it down at Orange Beach this week when we get down there tonight. But a lot of LSU fans will be down. Hey, when you go to Publix there, you got your Auburn stuff, your Alabama stuff. You know what other school you got everywhere? LSU, because that's y'all's beach, isn't it?
Hey, I'd love to be down there with you too this weekend, man. That first fall breeze blows in. I want to go to the beach, because no one's going that time of year, right?
That's right. So. That's right. Hey, let people know how they can keep up with you, follow you, and all your great stuff. And let me say, most often we see the face of Christ and the least among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. We have the best guests, the best viewers, and the best sponsors, like Jacques Doucet.
Thank you, buddy. Thanks for having me on. I always enjoy the conversation, and look forward to a great college football season with you.
Yeah, it is going to be a great one, and they can catch you on social media. How?
At Jacques Doucet, JACQUES, like Cousteau, DOUCET. Our television station is WAFB.com, and Facebook, Twitter, all those different things. YouTube as well.
All right. Thanks so much. We'll see y'all tomorrow. We're out of here.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am R.A. Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.